We are waiting on one other of our candidates, and while we're waiting, I just remind everyone to please silence your cell phones. That was kind of cool. Everybody reached in their pocket and got their phones at the same time. So if you didn't do that, grab your cell phone and turn it on silent, please. All right. And now that everybody is here, let me grab this microphone. Hello and welcome. How's everyone doing tonight? I can't hear you. You're going to be quiet for about 2 hours. How's everyone doing tonight? All right. All right. Thank you so much to our candidates for being here. Thanks to our audience members for being here. I am very grateful for this opportunity to meet in person 2 years into COVID. That's pretty amazing. And I'm very grateful for a lot of things in my life, like my family, our health. My sister just had a newborn baby a couple weeks ago. No, there aren't. I am very grateful for my 5-year-old daughter, who gave us the construction paper that our timekeeper is using. In an emergency, we said, how are we going to tell the candidates they have 20 seconds left? And she came through. She is way smarter than I. And I am so grateful for our officers, first responders who serve our community. Tonight, we're gathered at the American Legion here in Santa Clara. And their mission is to enhance the well-being of America's veterans, their families, and our community members. They do this with a devotion to mutual helpfulness and selfless service. Selfless service. Thank you. Couldn't think of a more fitting place for our Santa Clara County Sheriff's Forum. Thank you to the American Legion, and thank you to GS2AC for letting us take over your meeting space tonight. My name, does anyone know it? My name is Jonathan Fleming. Thank you. And I'll be your moderator tonight. I am the Executive Director and the CEO of the Silicon Valley Public Accountability Foundation. Thank you. Thank you. And we're hosting tonight's event because we felt it was the most important of the races here in this election. And we wanted to make sure that our residents and the voters were informed and could make an informed decision at the ballot. Our organization holds our government accountable to the people. And we are building teams and partnerships in the community to ensure, of experienced leaders, to ensure that our policies and leaders and solutions are actually, that we need, are done to improve our quality of life here in Silicon Valley. We've witnessed rising crime in our neighborhoods, and we want to feel safer. Over the past several years, the office of the sheriff has been corrupted by poor leadership, including numerous scandals, lawsuits, a pay-to-play system, mistreatment of our community members. Our residents are demanding better, and the personnel at the sheriff's office are demanding better. Their morale has been crushed, and these candidates here are going to change that. For the first time since 1998, we'll be electing a new sheriff, and the task before that person is extremely challenging and momentous. Our next sheriff will be working hard to improve our safety, improve morale, update training methods, repair and improve race relationships, hire more officers, comply with existing court orders against the department, and advocate for better laws. This is one of the most important election decisions, so let's pay attention and let's make a good decision at the ballot box on June 7th. Unlike other candidate forums, there's not going to be any political bias. There's not going to be any gotcha moments. There's none of that. Our questions were created by our community members. We sent out questionnaires, and people answered them. Our team put them together, went through that data, and came up with 11 questions for our candidates. Now, we expect the best and the most thought-out answers possible, so we gave our candidates the questions ahead of time so they could come up with their best responses, truthful and honest. And I'm looking forward to their answers here tonight. On the written questionnaires, we're going to publish that on our website at svpaf.org/election22. Now for the rules of tonight. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening statement. The question and answer portion of the forum will last about 90 minutes, with about 1.5-minute answers. If I feel a candidate hasn't answered a question or is skirting around the issue, I may ask for a follow-up or ask them to be more specific in their answer. We're going to end with a 1.5-minute closing statement by each candidate. Your time for each question will begin when you start to speak. Our timekeeper, raise your hand. Raise your hand, big. There you are. He's going to be holding up your time cards. The yellow one is 20 seconds. The red one is stop. If you don't stop when the red one is up, then I'll cut you off. And then I'll brag to my friends I got to cut off a sheriff, so that'll be kind of cool. Rebuttals. There will be 30-second policy rebuttals, one allowed for each candidate. If you're personally attacked, and please don't attack somebody, but if you are, I will allow you to respond, and it will not count as a rebuttal. Aside from your microphones, please turn off all electronic devices. They're not allowed during this candidate forum. Audience members, I'll ask you to hold your applause, except for in certain specific areas. Now, without further ado, the Silicon Valley Public Accountability Foundation welcomes our candidates. We're going to start at the end of the table with Sheriff Sergeant Sean Allen. Go ahead, applause. Business owner Anh Colton. Retired Sheriff's Captain Kevin Jensen. Sheriff Sergeant Christine Nagaye. And Chief of Police Bob Jonsen. Now, much to everyone's pleasure in this room, I'm going to be quiet, and I'm going to let our candidates make their 2-minute opening statements, starting with Mr. Allen.
Hello. Hello to everyone. My name is Sean Allen. I've been with the Sheriff's Office a combined total of about 32 years. Mic to my mouth. I apologize if you can't hear me. Sorry. So I was born here, raised here. I'm married, father of 4. I have led the largest and smallest of our unions, one being about 800 members and one being about 65, comprised of managers and supervisors. I spent a majority of my career as a training officer and teacher. I teach things like de-escalation of force, inmate manipulative behavior, scenarios based on how we deal with the public. During my career, I have fought corruption and discrimination within the agency. Others will tell you they too are against corruption. However, it's something I've been doing for my entire career. I've been retaliated against for it, and I've had to litigate and prevail for it. As a young man, I personally was arrested in this county for something I didn't do. I was incarcerated and exonerated, housed in the very jail I work in today. Collectively, these things give me a unique perspective on the problems within our agency and how to resolve them. As sheriff, I have absolute zero tolerance for corruption. For people who aren't tolerant of social inequities, racial inequities, sexual and homophobic and discriminative behavior. We are here because our citizens are concerned about public safety. We cannot effectively do our jobs without the public trust. It's important that we hold our employees accountable so that the people, oh, I'm sorry. I guess I'm done.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Now we're going to go on to Mrs. Colton.
Thank you. Can you hear me now? Okay. Thank you, Jonathan Fleming and the Silicon Valley Public Accountability. Thank you, Jonathan Fleming and the Silicon Valley Public Accountability Foundation for allowing me to have this opportunity to be here and to meet you all. As a parent and entrepreneur and raised by immigrant parents, I have the passion, the work ethics, education, heart, experience values, and constitutional principles to make wise decisions as a county sheriff who take responsibility to be the keeper of the peace and the people's protector. Thank you for being here.
Please hold your applause. Hold your applause till the end. Thank you, Mrs. Colton. Now, Mr. Jensen.
Thank you. My name's Kevin Jensen. I am a husband to my wife, Julie, of 39 years this August. She's watching probably, so I want to make sure that's right. I'm a grandfather of 9, and in the middle there are 3 children that each had 3 children. I've done just about everything in this sheriff's office, and I'm proud of it. I'm proud of every time I got to work there, but it wasn't always this way. I think I've told a couple of you in here that I didn't always wear this suit. I can't get into the whole detail because I've got 2 minutes, but I will tell you that growing up, my earliest memories are being outside of the Angola State Penitentiary, where my dad was serving 3.5 years for armed robbery. I was in a little trailer, and my first memory is somebody bringing us food. My mom was 15 when she got married, and 16 when she had me, and this life was dysfunction all the way till about the age of 15. You know, alcoholic parents, divorces, bad boyfriends, some abuse, and going to more schools than grades. But there were bright moments. Growing up in San Francisco in a multicultural area, the opportunity to have a coach or a bus driver kind of take an interest in you, and all I wanted to do was make my life better. So at about the age of 15, that person who had been in that prison somehow found us again and changed his life. He had an incredible story that I didn't believe at first, but he had changed his life, and he wanted us to know how incredibly sorry he was and that people can change. And eventually I grew to accept that, and my life changed. And when I was reunited with him, I found myself wanting more values in my life and changing it and taking the pain and making something positive. I met my wife when I was 17. I got a job at the Santa Clara County Sheriff's Office. They gave me benefits for my 3 children, and I've never stopped giving back, and I never will. And that's why I believe that tonight I'm very proud to be here and tell you all about why I should be sheriff. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jensen. Please hold your applause till the very end. I know it's hard. They're all awesome. We all want to applaud, but we got to hold off till the end. Thank you. Now we're going to go with Mrs. Nagaye.
Good evening, and thank you so much for allowing me this time to speak with all of you. It is an absolute honor to be with all of you. As a fellow veteran, I very much appreciate your service as well. My name is Christine Nagaye, and I am running for Santa Clara County Sheriff. First, I'm going to be transparent out the gate. I am a progressive. I am a common sense progressive, however. I am a lifelong Democrat. But I am, like I said, a common sense Democrat. I believe you can advocate for change and reform while still doing the vital work and keeping our community safe. I am running to change law enforcement, not just here, but to influence change everywhere. Law enforcement needs to take a serious self-inventory and ask, who are we here for? I have taken a look and seen so many things that need to be addressed. We need to look no farther than last summer to see the arbitrary uses of violence and aggressive tactics that have no place in our civilized society. And the instances of violence that we see are only the ones that have been caught on video. Even here at home, there's a lack of transparency, encrypted police radios, shutting out the media. This is evidence that the thin blue wall is still standing. Officers look the other way instead of doing the right thing. We need common sense changes to our culture and our law enforcement. As sheriff, I will make the policy changes within the agency I am in charge of. I will identify the bad apples as well as those who have protected them. And I will do everything within my legal ability to get rid of them both. As a politician and administrator, I will lobby the appropriate entities to make the needed changes so that our communities feel safe and valued. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jonsen, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. For this first question, just so you see a face, whether you want to or not, with the voice, for those in the back. I'm Bob Jonsen. Yes, I'm running for Sheriff Santa Clara County. You know, my roots for this county go way back. In fact, this is where our family founded. settled in 1850, and my great-great-uncle was the actual sheriff of Santa Clara County in 1887. So my ties go long, long way back. I bring a very unique perspective and background to this particular race. My 36 years in law enforcement range from working for the largest law enforcement agency in the country, or sheriff's organization in the country in Los Angeles, small department in Menlo Park, and one of probably the most engaged and progressive cities of Palo Alto. And those experiences have given me the opportunity to work some of the most violent and economically challenged neighborhoods in our state, as well as some of the most affluent cities. And that diversity of experience is reflective of what our county is going through today. I'm the only candidate in front of you that has actively been engaged as an executive around accountability, transparency, and police reform over the past 2 years. And that's important, because if you haven't been part of those conversations, you may be missing out on a lot of things that we need to address. I feel comfortable about this campaign, the structure of the organization, the challenges that we need to confront, because I'm a collaborator. I always have been in all the agencies I've worked for. I understand what needs to change, I understand how to change it, and I understand how we need to change how we serve our communities. So I'm extremely excited about tonight, very passionate about this profession. It's something I've been doing consistently for 36 years now, and hope to continue to do it for many more years so we can address these pressing issues that we have in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I'll remind our candidates, when you are speaking, put your microphone as close to your mouth as possible so everybody can hear you, even those in the way back, right? Okay. So first question of the night, we're going to go with Mrs. Colton. You'll start this off. And the question is, what makes you the best candidate for sheriff, and what is your personal experience with leading a large and diverse organization?
I believe I'm the best candidate for sheriff because I am passionate about moral values, justice, and upholding our constitutional principles. These 3 pillars are the guideposts of what I believe ought to be the basis to make wise decisions as county sheriff, who will take responsibility to be the keeper of the peace and the people's protector, and upholding the Constitution. I have led large and diverse groups in my homeschooling community and in the health community. Thank you.
Thank you. Same question, Mr. Jensen.
Thank you.
You ready?
Jensen.
Jonsen.
I knew that was
Kevin.
going to happen at one point.
I apologize. Jensen, Johnson, we're going to...
We're going to snake around the table, so that'll be the easy way from this point forward.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Thank you for the question. I have the most experience at all levels of this sheriff's office, especially running the jails as the assistant chief when it was a national model before it went into the hands of our incumbent. I have the near unanimous trust of the people who will work alongside me to make the changes necessary to come back to excellence. This SCC POA in the jail and the 97% of the Deputy Sheriff's Association endorsed me to change the culture, improve the deficiencies that the public is now well aware of and that I've been calling out for 12 years. I have earned countywide respect and all the major endorsements from law enforcement, community leaders, and stakeholders for publicly calling out that mismanagement for 12 years. At the Board of Supervisors meetings, at Blue Ribbon Commission meetings, in the media, at any place somebody would listen, because that's not what I signed up for when I was 21 years of age and somebody gave me a gift of being a public servant. I ran against the sheriff, getting 41% in 2014 when she was at her peak of power, and I received 41% as a no-name when I went back and still had to fight with my father battling cancer. My greatest career accomplishments, as you asked, I think it's been managing the jails as a national model before they were transferred and engendering the trust and collaboration with all stakeholders to leave every division I've managed better than when I first arrived, and I'm proud of that fact.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Nagaye?
Thank you very much. The Sheriff's Office is in dire need of reform, and I know I can deliver the changes that are needed. I am the only candidate who is truly committed to real change and law enforcement reform. I am a 25-year resident of the Bay Area, and I'm a 17-year continuous resident here in San Jose. I am a mom and I am a U.S. Army veteran. I'm an LGBTQ plus ally, and I'm married to a man of color. All of these help me understand the diverse natures of all of our communities here in Santa Clara County. I want everyone to feel safe and protected, and I vow to fulfill my oath to protect and serve. I am the only candidate who is currently working on the line, side by side with the deputies on a daily basis. My opponents are far removed to effectively solve the issues that occur on a daily basis. I will fight for Santa Clara County's most vulnerable communities and protect working families as they pursue the American dream. I want Santa Clara County to be a place where parents can be proud and children can be safe. In the U.S. Army, I was trained in very diverse groups of people, leading with integrity and leading by example, and I follow that value with me every day, always.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jonsen.
Thank you. Well, I mean, plain and simply, I would say I'm the best candidate because I'm the only candidate with executive experience in a large organization in the Sheriff's Department, as well as in municipalities. I was 27 years with the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, worked every rank, multiple divisions, understand the complexity of that. I was 5 years chief of police for Menlo Park, 4 years chief of police for Palo Alto. All of those assignments have really prepared me because I'm the best candidate because I have a proven track record for addressing the things that need to be addressed. I have actually changed accountability measures. I have actually changed transparency for the better. I have actually worked on police reform. All of these experiences have actually shaped and led to state and national awards for the agencies that I was leading, such as, for example, 2-time recipient of the James Q. Wilson Award for Community Policing, the Helen Putnam Award for Excellence in Public Safety, and the prestigious International Chiefs of Police Association for Community Policing. I've done that. I've been there. I know what has to be done. This is a very, very complex organization that I think some people are minimizing. It's not just about the correctional facilities. We have to address public safety. We have to address mental health. We have to address homelessness, and I've done all those things in the agencies that I've worked for. So again, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. This next question, we're going to begin with Mr. Jensen in the middle of the table.
Sean.
Yep, we all make mistakes. I am not immune to that. Mr. Allen, I apologize, and it is your turn.
Thank you. Well, I believe I'm the best candidate because, again, everyone's going to say what they are going to do, and this is exactly what I've done in my entire career with this agency. No one has fought and exposed and confronted the corruption as in-depth and as long as I have. No one's been intimately involved in the situations that have occurred over the last 2 years that the public is concerned about. From Tyree to Andrew Hogan, all those situations, I was intimately involved with either as a union rep or as an employee. I'd expose these kind of things. So it's not, yeah, he's right, it's just not a custody thing. I would argue that out of everyone on this board, I'm probably the last person that has even made an arrest. I teach this stuff. I understand where it's at. I understand the complexity of the relationship that most people don't understand that this county has with its jail system and its sheriff's office. It's a contract. It's one of 3 counties like this. It's very specific in terms of what we need to do and how we need to do it. We're failing at addressing mental health issues. We're absolutely failing. We don't have the adequate staffing or resources to give adequate long-term care to people who have mental health issues. So I would argue that, as far as the question is concerned, me leading an organization, the largest union is 800 people. I've led that union. I've fought to address the issues both inside and out, and I will do what I've been doing, not what I'm promised to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now, Mr. Jensen, the current sheriff's office has many problems, including the investigation into the pay-to-play campaign contributions to Sheriff Lori Smith. How do you fix these types of problems, and what will be your top 3 priorities if elected?
This is a lot longer than 2, but I'll give it my best shot, or a minute and a half. Trust is broken with our communities and stakeholders over the last several years by our sheriff. Morale, staffing, retention are all-time lows. Employee flight from our agency is at an all-time high. Our jails are unsafe for both staff and the incarcerated. With the trust I've earned from over 3 decades of ethical management, I will lead the change in our culture from the top by in-depth internal scrutiny investigation, facilitated interactive review and higher order values training, 360-degree evaluation process, and community-involved bridge building. I've received many comments that some employees will return, will hold off on retirements, and prolong their careers if I become sheriff. I'll establish a philosophy of being ethically accountable again, willing to collaborate as a local and regional partner to other organizations, and service-oriented in the mission of protecting and respecting all whom we encounter. The number one way is earning trust by modeling integrity as I have my whole career. 2, partnering with the Board of Supervisors, community, and other agencies to bring mental health solutions that will provide services to those in need to reduce incarceration and appropriately care for those who are incarcerated, because that's part of the problem. We still have to care for them. Utilize the vast relationships and resources I've developed through 37 years of nonprofit leadership across the nation and the state, and executive leadership all over. Best practices and solutions for the critical issues we face with crime prevention, community relationships, homelessness, and mental health treatment. And I've already started doing that, and I've done it in my career.
Thank you very much. The biggest issue currently facing the Sheriff's Office is the critical need for law enforcement and custody reform. As your new sheriff, my first priority will be an independent and thorough review of the law enforcement practices and the management of our county jails. The tragedies in our jails over the past 6 years are the most glaring examples that we need common sense reform. Reforms such as holding police accountable and revisiting qualified immunity, improving transparency by policing and collecting more accurate data of police misconduct and uses of force, improving police training and policies by banning religious and racial profiling and providing funding for racial bias training for law enforcement. I support the need for a civilian watchdog to audit the law enforcement practices and management of our jails. Our deputies need support in the form of more ongoing training. The sheriff continues to ward off efforts from the supervisors to implement the reforms that were recommended. I will start the Blue Ribbon Commission reforms again. Our jails need to be more just about housing people for a period of time than sending them back out into the same situation. We need social workers and counseling available to inmates, as well as education and job placement opportunities. We need to establish and fund a program that links law enforcement and social medical services. We also need to rebuild the trust with the communities and implement education outreach prior to somebody coming into the system.
Thank you. Top 3 priorities, and there are definitely a lot of priorities. But I would say for the Sheriff's Department, which we all know has been under tremendous scrutiny over the last few years, in addition to the last couple of years, the scrutiny on the profession as a whole, transparency is definitely one of those pieces that need to be addressed as a top priority. I'm not really for looking for more reviews, collecting more data. A lot of it's already been done. It's about moving forward. And the relationship right now with the oversight, Mike Giannacco's office and the sheriff's office, has been contentious, to say the least. That needs to move forward immediately, and I have the ability to do that on day one because I have over 12 years of working with Mike Giannacco. He was our office independent review when I was the captain of Lancaster Station in LA, and he's been the chief attorney for the independent auditor for the city of Palo Alto. So I know what he needs, I know what he does, and I'm comfortable in having him look at what we need him to be looking at and giving him the documents so he can do his reviews and we can start moving forward. Mental health, without question, is a priority. And instead of waiting to obtain funding, which is great, I actually supported Supervisor Ellenberg's position on the mental health resources and the outlook on that. But the fact is, we can do something right now by getting trained clinicians and psychologists in an intern capacity by working with our educational facilities. Partnering them up, they need 2,000 hours of work. We can get them into the jails right now under one supervisor. 5 clinicians for 1 supervisor sounds like a good deal to me. So it's about moving forward from day one. Last priority is creating public safety in a more cohesive and strategic way. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Allen?
I'm sorry. What was I'm going to read the question. I'm kind of lost.
Yo, that's fine. The question is, the current sheriff's office has many problems, including the investigation into the pay-to-play campaign contributions to Sheriff Lori Smith. How do you fix these types of problems, and what will be your top 3 priorities if elected?
Thank you. Okay. The correlation between donations and special treatment are also prevalent internally. Many employees that donated to Lori Smith's prior campaign were promoted and provided specialized units assignments. The current problem includes culture, training, ethics, incompetent leadership, lack of accountability, transparency, reforms, and training, all things that I have worked on and will continue to work on. As sheriff, I would replace the undersheriff and 3 assistant sheriffs because they either said idle to the corruption or part of it. This would help change the culture. It would bring a new vision and promote accountability. There are 15 captains in the sheriff's office, with 1 commanding each division. I would rotate them and consider replacing those people. This would provide more diversity, build more diversity, prevent complacency, and bring new vision. To invigorate and reset the sheriff's office, the managing staff needs to replace and restore public trust, morale, and provide better services via accountability reforms and transparency. I believe a thorough audit investigation is necessary. The use of force policy, the use of the camera policy, and mental health care practices, internal affairs practices, hiring and promoting practices also need to be thoroughly vetted. Thank you. Oops, sorry.
I believe the sheriff's office is currently faced with the following: confusion of roles and responsibilities. The true essence of what a sheriff is lost in recent times. The role of the sheriff is to protect the citizens and uphold the constitutional rights without compromise and fulfill the oath which the sheriff is bound by. 2, lack of transparency, which goes hand in hand with accountability and trust within the sheriff's office. The term of sheriff office position should be limited to 2 terms, and the communication and building connections, relationships with the citizens in the community are limited. As the Santa Clara County Sheriff, I would define the role and responsibilities of the sheriff clearly as it's spelled out in the Constitution. Realign the roles and responsibilities with the needs of our community to ensure we are within the constitutional framework, as well as learn about the Constitution. Lastly, I would find ways to connect and build relationships between the sheriff's office, all the citizens in our communities, to ensure trust and mutual growth and well-being of all. And that's the 3 will be my top priorities. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're going to move on to question 3, and for our timekeeper, this will be a 1-minute response. We're going to start with Mrs. Nagaye. As you are aware, the California Department of Justice has opened a patterns and practice investigation into our sheriff's office to investigate allegations relating to conditions of confinement in its jail facilities, resistance to lawful oversight, and other misconduct. How do you intend to implement any meaningful change at the sheriff's office while this investigation is occurring?
Thank you for that question. First, as sheriff, I will release any and all documents, videos, and reports to both the supervisors and to the Office of Corrections and Law Enforcement Monitoring. There will be complete transparency from day one. The days of favoritism and nepotism are over. I will hold those accountable for their actions, and there will be no interference from executive staff. I also find it unfortunate that many agencies have reverted to encrypted radio traffic. In the California Highway, if the California Highway Patrol can implement workable means to protect privacy and still allow the media, the public access to this information, why can't we? I'd also present an option to the supervisors for a fully electronic CCW application system. Information can be redacted to keep the applicant's information confidential. I also plan a complete reform of the Custody Bureau for training and living conditions.
So we're addressing the issue of pattern and practice investigations, right?
That is correct.
Okay, so in 2011, I was the captain of Lancaster Station in Los Angeles. I was placed there to work with the California State Department of Justice, who was conducting a pattern and practice investigation for the region. The reason I was placed there was because of my collaborative approach, and that's exactly what has to occur when you're having a review conducted. I did that both internally and externally, because you have to address both morale, which is definitely impacted during these reviews, as well as move forward the review process. I was very successful at doing that, and one of the best ways we had was to develop a community advisory group that we started talking with on an ongoing basis and sharing information and telling them what we were going to do and how we were going to do it. That worked very, very well for us in Menlo Park. In Los Angeles. But in Palo Alto, we've been continuing that kind of conversations regardless of a review. We've been doing race and equity action plan, talking about police practices, and my point is that open communication has to begin from day one, and that's what I've always done in my career. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Allen?
As far as patterns and practices, it's my intent to open up and have meaningful oversight, oversight with teeth. What we have now is a lack of cooperation, and I don't believe that that's it's obviously not working. So I would like to extend and establish a meaningful relationship with all groups that are affected and impacted by our services in the Sheriff's Office. The Sheriff's Office requires its leadership, like I said, to be overhauled. So, and with that overhaul, reforms are the big consideration that's not been handled appropriately. And that's it. Sorry. Thanks. Sorry.
I intend to use wisdom and guidance based on the constitutional principles to implement any meaningful change at the Sheriff's Office while the investigation is occurring. Thank you.
In order to do patterns of practice, you have to go back and you have to look at what's happened. And a lot of things that have happened have been hidden for so long that it's hard to find out what happened. Well, I have the trust of the 97% of the DSA and the overwhelming support of the unions and the people doing the job. So they're waiting. They've told me they want it. I've called for open investigations. I've called for oversight for 12 years. I've actually fought on the front lines to gain these things so that we could actually be an open partner with our community, with our board of supervisors again. When I was the assistant chief of the jails, I had to give them exactly what they needed at any time. And though the relationship has changed, I still feel we should give them everything they need at the time. I don't believe in hiding things. I don't believe in mismanagement. What I believe in is work with the people who are supposed to hold you accountable, and you've got nothing to hide. And if we've done something, own it and move on. And the way you move on is you build trust again. You hold those people accountable. I worked internal affairs 2 years. I was running that division, and that's what I did. I've had to walk people off the job. It wasn't pretty, but it was necessary.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to go on to our fourth question of the night, back to a 1.5-minute response. And it is to Mr. Jonsen. We understand that the Sheriff's Office is currently understaffed, with numerous deputies transferring to other agencies or putting in for retirement. What is your plan to retain officers and grow the department?
No, that's a great question. You know, Santa Clara Sheriff's Office, as you've already heard, is having a mass exodus. They're under tremendous scrutiny, and morale is probably at an all-time low. And that's the issue, because you have a department that's funded for 1,299 positions, and they're at a vacancy of about 12% right now. 74 on the correctional side, 91 on the law enforcement services side. That's a significant vacancy. That's not even accounting for some of the reductions that took place with budgets, as well as people who are out on workers' comp. So those need to be addressed immediately. And I've done that both in Menlo Park and Palo Alto, where both agencies were confronted with a mass exodus. And we were able to adjust the salary for the employees there, create opportunities, create even new positions, and it created energy and synergy within the building and helped us fill positions almost immediately. Even with after the last 2 years, what we've been confronted with in Palo Alto, we lost numerous positions as well. We had a hiring freeze, but when they allowed us to open it up, because of the success we had done and the programs we had implemented, we've been able to fill 11 of our 13 vacancies in the past 6 months alone. So there's a method to how you go about it, and it's about creating energy within the organization and opportunity for growth. And I've been successful at doing that in all 2 of the organizations here in the Bay Area. Thank you.
Our retention problems can be traced back to poor leadership. This includes a lack of integrity within our promotion process and other opportunities of advancement. The deputies need support from leadership with intimate knowledge of why the department has broken down. Someone that will not plead the fifth, who is not afraid to make aggressive changes and knows where to start and to make that happen. I will look for employees who have integrity, vision, commitment to the organization, that don't have individual loyalty but organizational loyalty. People with objectivity, drive, problem-solving ability, who are analytical, thorough, and have the will to do the right thing even when it might not be the popular thing to do. As it stands today, the current cause of staffing problems are mostly caused by vacancies. We must account for the non-funded codes we are filling daily with overtime and per diem employees and address services as needed. Thank you.
My plan to retain officers and grow the department is to establish a positive work culture of honor, respect, appreciation, and integrity. I would also talk with the officers and ask for their input and concerns that they may have. Thank you.
Because I've always modeled it, even when it was hard and I've been courageous, a lot of people have contacted me and said that they cannot wait for me to be elected. The reason is that the retention and the staffing, the morale, which I discussed, was so low because it was unethical from the top, and certain people chose not just to play the game and to hide, but also to hurt other people to get ahead. So for me, the easy way to do it is to be ethical and to hold those people accountable. Because so many people want to either come back or hold off their retirement, I'm blessed by that. I feel very good that they trust me that much. But you can only do that if you model it. Because when you look up and the leader is unethical or the leader is playing games or favorites, then everybody is for themselves at the bottom lines. And we've had that for too long. We've had people compromise their values because the pain was so great. And so at some level, compromise to try and make yourself stay alive and survive is one thing. But to compromise, to change your values and do something wrong, the sheriff put them in that position, and that's not going to happen under me. For me, with ethics and respect for people, for all people, with diversity that means great possibilities for people that are underserved, and great possibilities for departments because that brings with them great business sense, because now we're serving the model the right way. So I think for me, it's always been an easy fix. This is probably the easiest question. I'm loving the fact that people want to come back and work for somebody that they trust, and I appreciate that.
My plan to recruit and retain deputies will be based on common sense. First, I will present the supervisors with a plan to merge the enforcement and the custody bureaus together. Moving forward, I'd like to have one academy where everyone will graduate with a post-certificate. Graduates will work in the jails for 6 to 8 months and then transition out to the patrol and to the courts. The current custody bureau deputies will also be given an opportunity to earn their post-certificate. Upon graduation from the post-academy, they will sign a contract and commit to a minimum, or what is determined, of a 5-year contract with the sheriff's office. If they opt to leave earlier, they will be required to pay a portion of their training fees back to the agency. With an actual retention plan in place, the backgrounds unit will not have to rush the applications no longer through the hiring process. They will have ample time to conduct thorough investigations of each applicant and have a greater success rate of weeding out the bad apples. There needs to be a more efficient and effective recruiting process. The most important quality I want in each applicant for them is to value human life. The sheriff's office needs approximately 250 deputies to operate efficiently and effectively. Currently, the Enforcement Bureau has seen a mass exodus and is staffed at 150 to 175 deputies below the approved coded positions. And the Custody Bureau is in dire need of approximately 100 deputies. These vacancies are currently being filled by deputies working overtime, which is causing our budget to soar.
Thank you very much. So this next question, again, we'll have 1.5 minutes for it. We're going to start with Mr. Allen. And what qualities and characteristics do you look for when hiring deputies?
I apologize, it's going to be off the cuff. So, when we're hiring deputies, we have to look at people who have an interest in the complexities that our services are faced with. We don't have, this is not policing as we did in the 60s. We have a very complex environment. So deputies need to be mature in terms of their decision-making, their objectivity, their understanding of other cultures, because you can't just run into some people's houses and try to retrieve someone and arrest someone without necessarily following certain cultures. For example, I have some friends that are from the islands, and you talk to their elder. So these type of qualities are not prevalent today. We have a culture where the medicinal marijuana is creating an impact, so we're seeing more people who have that in their background and more issues with that. So we have to have people who will entertain the word necessary instead of justifiable when they're using force, because that's typically what we say is we justify it and it's not necessary. We have to have people who have patience and tolerance. Our mental health situation and our situation with the homeless has shown that let's face it, folks, $1 billion in taxpayers' money we spent to date because of this problem and because of bad decision making. So we have to have good decision makers in this profession. Thank you.
Okay. The qualities and characteristics that I look for in deputies are humility, truthfulness, heart for the job, a sense of purpose, valor, integrity, hardworking, trustworthy, reliability, and honesty. Thank you.
For me, this has always been something that I kind of want to see somebody who comes into the agency, and I've done hiring interviews, and I've passed on a lot of people. I think you have to start with personal integrity and ethics. If you don't have personal integrity and a moral compass, then you can't do the job. You have to get respect for all people, of all types of people, and you have to have reasoning skills that allow you to think beyond a simple task. You have to have self-control. In this day and age, sometimes that's one of the top ones on my list. If you can't force yourself to hold back in a situation when there's a child predator and you're in court and this person does something, then as much as I understand your emotions, you're not fit for the job. In this day and age, self-control is one of the top, and I think it's moving up even further. We have to have the ability to perform the essential functions with excellence and commitment. And what I really look for at the end of the day when I'm looking them in the eyes is, are they genuine? Is this some kind of a hiring speech, or do they really, really want to serve people rather than serving themselves? What's their motivation? Does it come from a place of wanting to serve and have a purpose? And that's what's important to me.
Thank you for that question. And I had just stated in my previous answer, for me, the most important quality that I want to see in each applicant is that they value human life. The past 5 years with the Sheriff's Office has been very tragic and very disturbing because we have the deputies do not value human life. And that is a key component to working in law enforcement, not just in Santa Clara County, but across the nation. In my time in the military, when I joined at 19 years old, first day, basic training was screamed in my ear, honesty, integrity, honesty, integrity. That is what I hold near and dear to my heart. A deputy comes into the agency, you must have honesty, integrity, and you must have the value of human life. Thank you.
Well, first, I have to go back to Ms. Colton and agree with something she said, that there should be a 2-year term for the next sheriff, because the reality is I do want to retire someday. So I'll commit to the 2-year term. But with that and the officer qualities, I think it's really important to understand, obviously there's those core qualities that they have to have: integrity, honesty, hardworking, discipline, positive. But what I really look for, and I've done it for the past 9 years, I meet with every candidate. I don't delegate hiring. I meet with every candidate before final approval is given. I want to know if they're innovative, and I want to know if they're going to be part of a team approach. because that's really important, because what we're finding in this workforce today, and it was just an amazing survey by the American Psychological Association that came out last year, that only 36% of the workforce is engaged. Think about that. 36% of the workforce in America engaged in what they do. We need all of them to be engaged. So how do we do that? Well, one of the things I do with every employee when I come into a command is I meet with them one-on-one, every single employee, so I can find out what their career aspirations are, what their organizational values are, so we can make sure we're lined up and we go after those objectives. And we also make sure we have things that are happening ongoing. And that's why at Palo Alto, I developed an internal solution group made up of all ranks, all departments, so they can address solutions as they're developed or as they arise within the organization, so we keep a positive momentum moving forward. Thank you.
All right. So for this next question, we're going to go back to a 1-minute response. What is your stance on releasing undocumented, serious, and violent criminals into the custody of Immigrations and Custom Enforcement? Mrs. Colton?
Thank you for the question. ICE is responsible for enforcing federal laws, both criminal and civil, that encompass border control, customs, trade, and immigration. The Enforcement and Removal Operations, ERO, is one of the 3 operational directorates of ICE, and it manages all aspects of the immigration enforcement process, including identification and arrest, domestic transportation, detention, bond management, and supervised release, including alternatives to detention. Unless there's reasonable cause to not do so, the releasing of undocumented, convicted, serious, and violent criminals fall under the jurisdiction of ICE and should be released into its custody. Thank you.
So I think what's happened for too long is that I believe well-intentioned people often fail to contemplate unintended consequences. I'm going to work like I always have to bring opposing viewpoints together to both preserve the trust, dialogue, and assistance of the undocumented in our communities and protect all in our communities, including the undocumented, from serious and violent criminals. We need balance and reason, 2 words that are no longer spoken very much anymore. Regardless of their status, serious and violent criminals are going to be held to the extent of the law. When you see the fighting in different counties about what does that mean, we need to put the Board of Supervisors, we need to put police leaders, and we need to put community leaders in the same room and say, we've seen tragedy, we've seen people minimalized in their hometowns where they feel like they're being threatened. Why don't we find reason and balance and do the right thing in every situation? Sometimes you think you're going to go to one extreme or the other. I'd rather do what's reasonable and right.
Currently, Santa Clara County is a sanctuary county. If an undocumented individual has been convicted of that crime and their sentences have been served, they will be released to immigration. I will not pawn off the sentencing and conviction to another country.
Yeah, so, I mean, first, I'm going to honor any established policy and protocol to ensure the communities stay safe. We have to keep our communities safe. But the reality is, just what other speakers have said, Senate Bill 54, which was the Sanctuary State and the Truth Act, was actually passed when I was the chief of Menlo Park. And we had to adapt to that. And we actually, in Menlo Park, they codified that by making an ordinance. But even with that ordinance in place, we still would communicate with ICE when we were under that criteria. That's really important to understand in order to keep our communities safe. In 2017, after that ordinance was passed, we just no longer were working with ICE on immigration efforts. But as you just heard, it is, in this county, it's a resolution that we will not use county resources to communicate and share information with ICE. And in 2019, as a chief of this county, I actually reaffirmed those ordinances to make sure that we continued to abide by them, but also keep our communities safe. Thank you.
It's already been stated, but I'll state it again. The county has adopted policies against cooperating with the immigration and customs enforcement officials. In that regard, in circumstances where policies and laws conflict, our policies must always be public safety, as well as humane treatment and constitutional protections of the people we have in our custody. Prior to the policy change, we cooperated with ICE and gave them access to non-documented immigrants in our custody. This allowed the federal government to initiate the deportation process prior to the release of non-documented immigrants. Local leaders and the public did not agree with this practice because it impacted the families associated with these non-documented immigrants. But in the recent years, we have seen some of the non-documented people commit violent crimes once they're released. The idea is to stick to the policy and keep the public safe. Thank you.
Thank you. So this next question, we have 1.5 minutes for a response. It's to Mr. Jensen. What is your plan to build and improve community trust with the 2 million residents of Santa Clara County?
I've been planning on it since I ran in 2014 and 13, and I've lived it ever since I was here. I continue to be honest and transparent in actually calling for and establishing best practices that actually help us serve better, not simply look better, which has happened the last 20-something years. I'll start with changing the culture of our agency from the top down, not the bottom up. I think we've seen what happens when an unethical leader models that kind of a practice. It leaves people looking for an escape, whether that is violence or whether that is going to another agency. It isn't pretty. Some people have actually done a very good job. There are men and women doing this job, I want to say that tonight, that are still holding the line with integrity. So they're not all bad. And there are many there that are doing the right job. In fact, there's a smaller percentage that have problems. But the problems were created by the top, not the bottom. The problems were created by somebody who decided that the rules were going to change and be more about power, so people didn't have the opportunity to succeed. Before we improve them and transform them into the trustworthy agency that we are, we need to actually fully review what we've done. We can't go forward until we look back like a disaster scene and have an after-action report. I want to get to the root causes. I want to expose them. I want to train them on values again. And then I want us to go forward with community leaders and business and also the Board of Supervisors to be the agency of excellence that our community deserves. And that's how we'll do it from the top down.
My plan to build better community trust with the residents of Santa Clara County is to have greater community outreach. Currently, the Sheriff's Office does not reflect the diverse communities that is Santa Clara County. I will continuously meet with LGBTQ+ leaders, with Asian Pacific American leaders, with Jewish leaders, Black, Indigenous, people of color leaders, Hispanic leaders, Muslim leaders, veterans. I will meet with every group and the leaders of all those groups because that is what Santa Clara County is. I will work tirelessly with these diverse groups to regain their trust. Ultimately, I would like to build a commission consisting of deputies and community members to work together and to reestablish the trust that should exist between law enforcement and the people that we serve. Once created, I will also like to involve all the police departments. The community trust needs to extend to all law enforcement, not just the Sheriff's Office. Thank you.
So addressing the accountability and transparency issues that I've already addressed will help build trust, obviously. But one of the things I found extremely important, and I've done it in all 3 of my commands. I did it at Lancaster, in Los Angeles, Menlo Park, as well as Palo Alto. One of the first things I do within the first 6 months is I develop community advisory groups. And what those are groups that are made up of residents, business owners, or people that work in that area, and all scope. There's no criteria other than that. So there's no application, there's no review. Anybody that wants to be on it, I've accepted every single time. Those groups are instrumental in opening the lines of communication from day one. They help look at policy. They look at strategic rollouts that we're considering. They actually have input on what we're doing and how we serve our communities. For example, in Palo Alto, we had them develop a strategic traffic plan that was pertinent to that city. It worked out really well, so we then used our resources to implement their plan. We gave them input and say on specific policies that we were considering modifying that had to do with the way our personnel looked, the uniforms that we wore, because how we serve our communities should be dependent on what our communities want us to serve. So it's a great way to build trust immediately by having that engagement. If you look at my endorsements, I have a lot of community advisory members straight from those groups that are also endorsing my campaign, as well as the Asian Pacific American Club of Santa Clara County. So thank you.
Our agency has an issue with hiding things. In this profession, we have a problem with no one on this side of the fence wanting to talk about the elephant in the room. Prime example is we have 8 officers that are involved in 3,000 racial, homophobic, and misogynistic text messages, and 4 of them not only still have a job, they got promoted. So I will build the trust back by rebuilding the leadership of the organization so that doesn't happen any longer, to help support the foundation of the agency for those who do the work. As I mentioned earlier, I will be in the forefront of the department doing everything that is expected of our employees to model appropriate behavior. These actions will help boost morale and the confidence of the employees, which leads to better services to our community. The Sheriff's Office will become more collaborative, inclusive, to include oversight. I will work with the community groups, mental health, and other agencies to improve training and de-escalation techniques in all segments of the department, enforcement as well as custody. I will keep the lines of communication open to the public, and I will be there and visible so those people will know that I actually exist. The sheriff has been an absent role, so my plan is over the first 100 days to meet with every major educational institution, every politician, as many public entities as I possibly can to establish those lines of communication so we can make this agency better and the services better. Thank you.
Thank you. In order to have trust, you must first establish a relationship. From that relationship, trust can be earned and mutual respect can be gained. My plan is for the Sheriff's Office to work on developing a good relationship with the community through several avenues of exposure. This can be done both electronically and in person through community events, a monthly newsletter, and/or an ongoing Meet Your Sheriff Deputies program or other community-related safety programs. Connections to build relationships with other community groups and the leaders and the surrounding city local law enforcement are also critical. 2 million is a lot of residents, but in order to have a mutually thriving community, both the sheriff office and the community must find a way to work together to create a thriving community we want. And that all begins with the desire to develop a relationship on both sides. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move on to our next question. This question is to Mrs. Nagaye, 1.5 minutes. Major violent crimes in San Jose and Silicon Valley have increased since the implementation of Propositions 47, 57, and AB 109. As an elected official, would you use your position to advocate for changes to these laws? And if so, what would you want changed?
Well, according to the FBI statistics, Santa Clara County is well below the national average for violent crimes. And that is a great and amazing thing, and that's what makes Santa Clara County such a great place to live. Although there was a minor uptick from 2014 to 2016 when Proposition 47 was voted in, that number has continued to drop over the years. In 2020, the state violent crimes rate was 2.6% below that of 2010, before California even embarked on criminal justice reform. These propositions were voted on and passed by the voters. It is up to the district attorney to prosecute these crimes. However, if someone commits a crime, it is my job in law enforcement to stop them. Then it becomes the role of the criminal justice system and the district attorney to hold them accountable, just as it should. Thank you.
This is a great question, and this is one that just lands solidly in my wheelhouse. I actually agree. That is our job, is to keep communities safe and enforce the law. But one of the things that is very challenging is in changing the laws in this state is very, very challenging. And we saw that just last week when one of the bills proposing to modify property-related crimes got pulled out of the Public Safety Committee in Sacramento. So it's very challenging to change the laws in this state. So we have to be more strategic in how we approach crime. And I was a coordinator and for 3 years in Los Angeles County of the Antelope Valley Crime Fighting Initiative, which was an initiative that covered 1,370 square mile region, which is bigger than this county. Primary objectives was to reduce property crimes, gang-related shootings, and gang-related homicides. Our initiative led to the Community Policing Award through the James Q. Wilson Award ceremony. I led those efforts, but I did it by unifying all the resources within that region. And that's what it takes to strategically address our big issues confronting this. Yes, violent crime may be down. Santa Clara is relatively safe, but the brazenness of property-related offenses is overwhelming, and it's instilling a lot of fear in our communities. We need to go after those crews, and we need to do it very, very strategically, and I've successfully done that before. So I look forward to doing it as the sheriff of this county. Thank you.
The intent of these laws was to ease prison overcrowding while helping offenders reintegrate into our communities. We must ensure that the proper funding is available for our communities to provide needed services to help them get a foothold with housing, jobs, and other services as needed. These programs done correctly can also have a positive impact on recidivism, but it is critical to provide non-carceral solutions by providing a means for people to better themselves. As for AB 109, county jails weren't made for long-term housing. Therefore, the presence of people who have served prison time impacts those non-adjudicated people within our system. We must guard against unintended consequences of housing felons in county jails for long periods of time and mixing them and taking them from state prison and putting them in our environment. As the prison population is often more sophisticated and prison gangs have a different influence within our jail systems. For instance, we receive a lot of illegal drugs and narcotic arrests in our jail system because those people who bring them, those people involved are coming from the prison system, have a different level of sophistication. The idea is to give people other alternatives than incarceration. Thank you.
Propositions 47, 57, and AB 109 were adapted to address the overcrowded California prison population issue. Their implementation, however, have unintended consequences and must be corrected to restore and maintain justice and safety. These unintended consequences are listed below, but are not limited to the following. Under Proposition 47, unless the defendant had prior convictions for murder, rape, certain sex offenses, or certain gun crimes, certain crimes were reclassified as misdemeanors. Certain drug possession offenses now require a misdemeanor instead of a felony sentence. For example, possessing a specified controlled substance such as GHB, a date rape drug, is now a misdemeanor. Certain crimes involving shoplifting, grand theft, receiving stolen property, forgery, fraud, and writing a bad check that are considered a misdemeanor as long as it does not exceed the 950 threshold. Law enforcement is reporting that thieves are calculating to steal just enough to below the $950 threshold to avoid a felony charge. Under Proposition 57, the goal is to cut down on the state's prison population.
I gotta cut you off there. I'm sorry. Mr. Jensen?
Thanks. I will and I already have had many discussions on this, on the original intent, on the unintended consequences. of these laws. The public outcry is pretty loud, and I think people that actually understand the laws and people that don't have any idea why the laws are written are all in the same boat. And they're seeing things that are happening, and they're seeing a level of disorder and chaos that has them very upset. I will say that some of the intent of these laws was well placed. It was to try to, lessen the crowding of the state prisons where conditions are horrible. But some feel it was like passing the buck to the counties that aren't equipped to do this. And, I think a little bit of each is true. So while those state facilities are now, they're still pretty packed, and we still have a problem at the county level, we have a level of sophistication with the people that are here. We have probation that is totally overwhelmed and can't do the searches they used to do, and we're seeing crime. Now, a lot of law enforcement agencies haven't even been able to give their stats to the FBI, so I don't think those numbers are right. I think they're skewed. So what I believe we have to do is what I've always done. In the courts, when I ran court security from Palo Alto to Gilroy, we had a streamlining committee meeting, and we brought together DAs, PDs, OR, CJIC, law enforcement, and we said, we got the players in this room to solve the problems. Let's use reason again and balance. I'm going to keep using those words, and let's tweak those things we need to tweak. And when we have a real problem, let's fix it and not worry about our jurisdictional territories. We need to work together.
Thank you very much. Next question is to Mr. Jonsen, 1.5 minutes. A recent major decision with the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors involved either building a new jail or constructing a new mental health facility, but not both. If elected, what can you do to improve mental health care services while in jail and lower the recidivism rate?
Yeah, so, as I mentioned earlier, one of the things I did was I did support Supervisor Ellenberg's position on that, to invest in a continuum of care, for especially involving mental health in our correctional facilities. I will say I was pleased with the outcome, because I think structurally they do need a new jail, but we need to devote many more resources to the mental health, especially of those incarcerated. One of the things that I spoke about earlier is utilizing the institutions to partner with them, to bring in those clinicians and those psychologists to give us greater resources in the jails to access that. But one of the things we've also done is in the community, we are the first agency in the county in Palo Alto to deploy a psychiatric emergency response team. That's where we've partnered with putting a clinician in the car with a police officer to respond to calls for mental health. I'm a tremendous advocate for that, and I think those programs need to be expanded in far greater detail throughout this county and in the correctional facilities as well. One of the things that I would also say is the workforce needs resources as well. This has been a very trying time for the men and women. And one of the things that I've worked with for the last 5 years is developing a resiliency and compassion program for law enforcement that's actually certified for the state for all public safety employees to be part of. We need to look at all the different aspects, utilize the resources that are out there, and get people the services they need when they need it. And that's what I'll do as a sheriff. Thank you.
So as sheriff, I would ensure that adequate care is provided and be transparent when it's not. I would advocate for adequate care and resources to provide that care. The solution is not as simple as building one facility instead of another. We need to bring in subject matter experts to help guide us and to employ a variety of techniques and collaborative efforts with mental health professionals, our local elected officials, and sheriff personnel with expertise and experience in dealing with homelessness and those of mental health issues. Advocates for mentally ill and others to create meaningful solutions that are effective in the long term. Thank you.
As a community, we need to define what kind of moral judgment we want to guide us as our culture. I'm very passionate about this issue, especially if we as a community want to raise our children and the future generations to honor and respect each other as well as others' property. Justice, as your sheriff, my role and responsibility is to keep the peace and enforce the laws that our community and citizens have in the books to govern them. I pledge to enforce these laws accordingly. I would ensure to the constitutional guidelines to best understand how to navigate some of this critical yet disturbing instances. That said, I would like to assure my fellow citizens and community that criminal and all social disturbances will not be tolerated and will be weighted heavily to ensure mental health and criminal issues are addressed squarely and separately. Thank you.
This one was one that I was involved with from the beginning, and actually as my time as assistant chief of the jails, we recognized a need for facility modernization. When you have concrete structures that are built so that people can't get out, it's very hard to move things around, to move walls around, and to adapt and to improvise with the times. So a new jail was needed, it was necessary, and yet we can't incarcerate our way out of the problem. So where's the middle ground? The middle ground is, and as I talked to Supervisor Ellenberg too, because I was passionate about this, and I love the fact that she is passionate about the front-end mental health services and services for those that are suffering in the jails. We had creative programs in the jails that were everything from the hard locks, where you don't think you can program in there because they can't get out of their cells. You know, we did journaling. So you give them great works of art at their level of learning ability, and they have to think about these issues of existentialism, and they have to write about it, how they affected their lives. Many have never had that opportunity. But in the meantime, we have to build a jail with mental health professionals, as this one was designed, so that we'd have better treatment, re-entry, rehabilitation possibilities. So they're now, the space is being designed with an opportunity to have people come in. One of the things that I am really upset about is that we do not use the volunteers. So many people care about the mentally ill. Why aren't we using more of the volunteers, vetting them, bringing them in, faith-based groups, and so many people that care aren't allowed to come in and help? I think we can change that, and I'm going to.
I also support Supervisor Ellenberg on this topic, and my op-ed on this topic is published in the San Jose Mercury News. You need to look no further than the Michael Hogan tragedy to understand the need for a mental health and wellness center constructed in lieu of the new jail here in Santa Clara County. The report from the county executive staff to the supervisors advocated for a 535-bed facility to replace Main Jail South as a slap in the face to the community groups and civil rights advocates who meet with the elected officials. And just last year, to promote the treatment center for people with mental health issues, and also those who struggle with alcohol and drug disorders. Tackling the problem of recidivism is one of the main tenets of my campaign for sheriff. Our jails need to be more about just housing people for a period of time and then sending right back out to the same situation. We need social workers and counseling available to the inmates, as well as education and job placement opportunities. We need to establish and fund a program that links law enforcement and social medical services. In addition to having a new wellness facility, we would also benefit, in addition to having a new wellness facility, it will also benefit every Santa Clara County resident. In 2018, a study showed that providing more access to mental health treatment programs makes entire communities better off and is cost effective. More mental health treatments will reduce violence and property crimes and in turn could lower incarceration rates. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Now we are on to the next question here. This is to Mr. Allen. There's only two more, so bear with us here. Mr. Allen, 1.5 minutes. The city of San Jose recently passed a gun control ordinance requiring gun-owning residents to pay a tax to a nonprofit corporation and purchase liability insurance. The city says it is doing this to reduce gun violence, but critics have stated these laws unfairly target law-abiding gun owners and do nothing to address violence in the city. Do you think these measures will reduce gun crime, and what policies will you implement as sheriff to reduce or prevent major violent crimes in Santa Clara County?
This one has no real simple answers, but I do support the ban of ghost guns, as there is no reason for a law-abiding citizen to have them. I support common sense gun laws. Our jail population has been reduced for many reasons, including the pandemic. But many of those persons have chosen crime, and at times it escalates with violence because their options are sustainable living have been impacted. We live in one of the most prosperous communities in this country, yet we are faced with deciding how we will allocate funds to provide assistance to those in need. As far as our gun laws are concerned, I would continue to press forward with the current existing gun laws. It's the sheriff's responsibility to actually enforce and protect people's constitutional rights. And that's what I would do. Thank you.
I recognize that in any given community, these issues are inevitable. However, my role as the Santa Clara County Sheriff would be to consider these circumstances against the Constitution mandate. As for the issue of addressing the violence, I believe that should be left to the sheriff and the police department, and the citizens in our community need to know that they have a responsibility in this upkeep. I would seek to hear from all the county residents and what they are willing to do to ensure this communities are safe. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. While understanding the desire to take some action, I'm not convinced that the recent liability insurance requirements and fee will stand due to constitutional challenges. And they don't provide any solution to the huge problem of guns obtained illegally. 40 to 50% of guns used in crimes are taken from legal gun owners, and unfortunately, we don't do enough to help people understand how to keep them safe. So working with experts, I am working on another track that will actually help obtain gun safes and gun storage containers that are bolted so that when thieves break into a house, they don't steal your guns. And believe me, a lot of them do. So some are very, very responsible and they have gun safes and they have others, but there's obviously a group of people that have them that don't store them to the best of their ability. So I think that that's important to remember is that a lot of the guns that are used by people who are breaking into homes and stealing legal guns. So recent training I attended recently provided information that ghost guns are now easily climbing into the largest group of guns that are used in crimes. And new laws are coming. They're working on receivership laws and other laws. So I'm working with gun experts to find out what's the balance. And if you're going to go ahead and create laws that are already state and federal there for a local solution, I just want you to do it with the intent that it's actually going to help and not just to feel better. I want to make sure that gun laws are reasonable to the people that are actually sporting enthusiasts and gun owners that are responsible. We've had a terrible system, and in this county, we will never again sell gun permits. There will be a fair and transparent process that follows the law, and we will work with everybody to make sure that that is something that legal, responsible gun owners will be happy with, as well as private citizens who may not want a gun. But the solutions and best practices and latest technology is out there. We need to be collaborative, and we need to follow the law with common sense and not sometimes take knee-jerk reactions to make ourselves feel better.
Thank you for this question. This law, as well as Gavin Newsom is trying to pass, the law that Gavin Newsom is trying to pass at the state level mimics the Texas abortion law, is an overreach and, in my opinion, pure political theater. And this is coming from a lifelong Democrat and a gun control advocate. I don't believe these laws will stand up to the legal challenge, even with our very liberal Ninth Circuit Court. I advocate for common sense gun control measures, and I believe that law-abiding citizens should have their Second Amendment rights. And while I do not support these new laws, I do support ongoing, complete, and thorough background checks. There also needs to be continual training and ongoing proficiency. I also support allowing CDC to study gun violence. To reduce major violent crimes in Santa Clara County, it is my job as sheriff to ensure these laws are being enforced, and we need to be engaged with the communities to understand the issues there. I am also of the belief that adding more guns to these communities will not lower crime rates. Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, I'll start and I'll keep it simple. I've always been an advocate for responsible gun ownership and accountability. I support gun violence restraining orders. I support having safe storage ordinances. But the reality is, I mean, if we're being honest, it's not about implementing more laws. We have to go after why people feel comfortable in using a gun to instill violence in another human being. This is a topic I've been involved in since the 1990s. I worked with the LA County Office of Education Safe School Center in developing deferral and first-time offender programs on gun-related incidents. We were very successful at that. I actually facilitated on institutional violence and threat assessment for the National FLETC Law Enforcement Training Center for over a decade. And as I said earlier, I worked for 3 years reducing gun violence very successfully by going after the emotional aspect of young offenders and redirecting them into programs that had objectives to get them a different path in life. We've got to change the behavior rather than keep layering our society with multiple laws, because there are already multiple laws in place for us to effectively do our job. I will agree with the comments here. It's disturbing, the rise in ghost guns. We're seeing that here in Santa Clara County quite a bit. We've seen it even in Palo Alto. These are dangerous things that definitely need to be regulated and stopped immediately. So thank you.
Thank you very much. So now we're going to move on to our final question for the Q&A. This question is to Mrs. Colton. It'll be 1.5 minutes. Decisions external to the sheriff's office play a major role in the safety of our neighborhoods and how crimes are prosecuted. For example, the new Santa Clara County Narcotics Deferral Program says suspects will not be charged for narcotic crimes unless they have 3 or more narcotics cases in 1 year. What are the top 3 changes you would like to see made outside of the sheriff's office and outside of your control, which would significantly help to increase safety, lower crime, reduce recidivism rates in Santa Clara County?
As the Santa Clara County Sheriff, my role is to uphold the Constitution principles, justice, and moral values to govern the affairs of my community and ensure peace and safety. I acknowledge that decisions external to the sheriff's office can and do have an impact. That said, my approach to such matters would be, number 1, to keep my number 1 focus in ensuring the safety and peace of the people within my jurisdiction in Santa Clara County. Number 2, ensure the scope of impact does not negatively impact my community. Number 3, in the event that the external decisions made do negatively impact my jurisdiction, I would seek to engage the citizens involved to propose measures that align with the sheriff's core focus, and that's upholding the Constitution principles, justice, and moral judgment. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have to start with something that's affecting us all the way on the streets and all the way that is in the jails and in every law enforcement agency. We really have all talked about it, but when you have the 3-prong ideas where mental health really starts affecting us more than just in the jails, we watch it, and there's a portion of the homeless that are mentally ill. There's 10 or 11 reasons for homelessness. I mean, it's not one thing. But I would like to see more funding come down to actually solve the problem. And we have some help. There are groups in the city council and the mayor's office that have a homelessness team that are working on it. But we really need for people to stop competing to be the person that has the solution and start working together with all the solutions, because if we don't deal with mental health on the front end and start, like Supervisor Ellenberg said, getting treatment and bringing some dollars in here to give people a place to go before they're incarcerated, which will also reduce our recidivism and also our busting at the seams for incarcerating your way out of the problem. I think we have to have treatment for mentally ill. I think you have to have options for homelessness, but we also have to clean up those areas. I would like to see people put funding into actually cleaning up the areas where the refuse and the filth are, so that people can actually live there. The other thing is streamlining. When I was in the courts, I think we need the same thing in this area. Get people together, instead of working for their own ideas to get reelected, get people together that actually want to solve a problem from the community, from each organization, and make them work together to solve it.
The implementation of PC 1000 and Prop 36 had merit, but like most programs, it wasn't well thought out and went a bit too far. I feel in this case, drug treatment programs are preferable to incarceration, especially with first-time offenders. Ultimately, we do need to address the question as to why a person uses narcotics and ultimately fix that issue. In the meantime, prosecution under the spirit of the law is needed to keep personal accountability. First, we would need to address recidivism and create a culture that is effective in reintegrating others back into society. Second, addressing education and opportunity before kids get into the system. No one wants to be a criminal. If our kids are given equality education from K through 12 and beyond, followed by opportunities and a prosperous career options, the quote need for criminal activities is negated. Third, truly understanding the office we are running for shows we have no direct power here. That ultimately falls on the district attorney and state and local legislatures. But as sheriff, I know that I am not really a cop anymore, but I am a politician and an administrator. As a countywide elected official, I have a voice. I have a bully pulpit. I will have regular meetings with the DA, the county advisors, city officials, state officials, and our supervisors. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so 3 areas outside that we wish would change. Well, one is I actually am a big advocate, and with a disclaimer or asterisk, that I agree with Governor Newsom's plan for a care court concept. That's a really important thing, a tool for us to address homelessness in this county. The reality is it's an important issue for this county. 9 out of 10 residents think homelessness is a major concern, an issue that needs to be addressed. The care court will give us, law enforcement, some teeth in making sure those people that need care get the care, they're normalized, they're stabilized before they're re-entry, put back into a community. I also agree with my colleagues that we need to change the pathway to what's happening in our society. We need to actually change the belief of our correctional institutions into educational institutions. For those that need to be educated, from the moment they come in, they need to get an education, they need access to programs so they can benefit from them, and we need to redirect some of the funding that's at the state level for rehabilitation to the county. Because as you heard earlier, the counties are no longer temporary housing, they're actually becoming long-term housing. So from day one, those individuals need to have certified programs in place so when they get out, they can have sustainable employment. We have a huge opportunity here, especially in the green workforce. Think about it. If we could get solar companies, green workforce companies to start having certification programs in the correctional facility, we could have a workforce coming out that actually is to the betterment of our society from the day they get released. Thank you.
A lot has already been said on this, but I'll mimic some of the things in terms of there's no real solution, no real solution to homelessness. We have to open up some pathways for these people. We need a support group for these people. Our jails is not the place for long-term care, again, for people who have substance abuse problems, people who are homeless. I mean, I've seen in my career, literally, people will walk out of our jail and urinate on the front of the jail steps to get rearrested again because they need a place to stay. These types of things we have to provide different solutions for. Just the other day, I was in my old neighborhood near to the fairgrounds and looked in the creek, and there's tons of homeless people there. It's important that we, again, find solutions. So, I look forward to reaching out to other community leaders and other groups such as this one for answers, and with hope to better our community. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So the Q&A session is now over. We're going to move on to 1.5-minute closing statements by our candidates, starting with Mr. Jensen.
When we started talking about why, and I think everyone should ask themselves why somebody should become their sheriff. They need to have the right competencies and experience, and I have more of that in this particular situation with the trust of these men and women than anybody by far. And I've done it for a long time, and I've stood the fight to try and get things changed for the right way. We can do it. We will do it. I feel confident it's going to happen. The other thing is you have to ask yourself, at some point, how are we going to work with others? Where are our solutions coming from? I've never claimed to have all the answers. What I do is bring people together. One of the things that has helped me over the years with bringing resources in and serving others is being a part of the FBI National Academy. From going there in 2005 and graduating, there are 17,000 strong. When I was there, I realized for 10 weeks that we didn't have to have all the answers. We need to seek out solutions. In many places, it's already been done. And that's what I brought to my nonprofit work locally, at the state level, and at the national level as a president of a national organization with 56 subchapters. And we solve problems by using other resources. We may modify it, but we don't have to recreate the wheel. I bring people together. They've trusted me this long. The majority of law enforcement and the major endorsers have endorsed me for a reason. I've been fighting this fight. They've watched me. I have the competency, the character, and the courage. And I'd appreciate the votes, and I appreciate all of you being here tonight. Thank you.
The Sheriff's Office and law enforcement in general is in dire need of reform, and I know I can deliver the changes that is needed for the agency and our communities. And again, change should never result in a decrease in public safety, but an increase. Those who commit crimes must pay their debt to society, period. We are already guaranteed a change in leadership, but this does not automatically translate to a change in culture. I am the only candidate who is advocating for true reform. I am a 25-year resident of the Bay Area and a 17-year resident of San Jose. I want our residents to feel safe and protected, and I vow to live up to my oath to protect and serve. I am the only candidate who is currently working on the line, and I see the problems as they occur on a daily basis. My opponents are too far removed from the issues and entrenched in old school law enforcement culture to effectively solve the issues that are facing us today. I aim to create a culture of law enforcement that protects and serves everyone. I will fight for Santa Clara County's most vulnerable communities, protect working families, and ensure that everyone has a chance to live the American dream. I want Santa Clara County to be a place that the parents and children can be proud of, and where all the residents can feel safe. Thank you again for inviting me here with you this evening, and I'll gladly accept any questions later on.
So I'm going to stand up again so those in the back can actually reconnect the face with the voice and hear what I'm about to say. You know, for all of us, the last 2 years have been extremely challenging. We've all had our fair share of challenges, either professional or personal. And the reality is there's going to be challenges ahead of us, right, that we still have to confront. I actually can confront those challenges. Santa Clara Sheriff's Office needs a leader that is equipped and experienced to face those challenges of tomorrow. It's about really looking at what we can do. The reality is a new sheriff is coming. And it shouldn't create anxiety. There shouldn't be an alignment to try to close ranks so there isn't change within the organization. We should be extremely excited about all the things that we can bring to this county, the resources we can do collectively by working together. I have a record of doing that. I have the confidence I can make this one of the greatest organizations in the country, and I can restore the trust that this community wants in their sheriff's organization. And I've done it numerous times, whether Los Angeles, Menlo Park, Palo Alto, being innovative, creating solutions and opportunity, and I ask you for your vote this June. Thank you.
So most of us up here have had the opportunity to do what we're telling you, or some people are telling you they're going to do. I've actually done it. I've identified the problems within our organization, I've addressed them, and knew retaliation was coming. This is not a simple solution here, but it takes a simple response, the ethics and the fortitude to address the issues. People can say what they want, but the idea is that if you look at people's track records up here, you know, there's some obvious inconsistencies with some of our promises. I'm not calling anyone a liar, I'm just saying that we all had the opportunity to do, and what did you do? I'm homegrown, this is where I'm from. I'm dedicated to this office. I believe that the sheriff's office across the country is not as diverse as it should be. Diversity is what this community represents. This is Silicon Valley, the home of it. But yet, the sheriff's office, 58 counties in this state, and 50 of the counties are representative of one particular culture. Across the country, 5% of the sheriffs out of 3,066 are African American, less than 2% are women. If we're going to make fixes and reflect our community and with meaningful solutions, we need to do that. I'm not saying elect me because I'm black. I'm saying elect me because I've been doing what everyone else has promised they're going to do. I know where their issues are, and how long is it going to take someone from coming from the outside who's been distant from the organization to figure out where the problems are and where the solutions need to start? Thank you.
I will invest my time and energy working collaboratively with our community, officers, local leaders, nonprofits, business owners, entrepreneurs, and advocacy groups to restore the sheriff values in our communities, towns, preserve the peace in our county, protect citizens' constitutional rights, deliver justice, and uphold the foundation of the Constitution. My promise to you is to uphold the oath of the office for the Santa Clara County Sheriff position and to protect the citizens with all my heart, soul, and strength. Together, let's champion solutions for our future. I am honored to serve you in this process and respectfully ask for your vote on June 7th. Thank you for your time, and I hope to meet you at my table. Thank you.
Yes, everybody can applaud. I think we're all very lucky to have candidates of this caliber and this quality up here. Thank you all of you, very much. This has been a pleasure. I've learned a lot. I hope everyone in this room has learned a lot as well, and that this will help you when you make your decision on June 7th. We've asked the candidates to hang out at their tables in the back of the room to field questions, maybe a question that wasn't answered or a question that wasn't asked. Go ahead, meet them in the back, sign up for their email lists, get their campaign literature. There's a bar that is open. They have beer, they have alcohol. Go on over there, have some fun, and let's interact with our sheriff candidates. Thank you so much, everybody.